Good morning, Morai Rabotai, Bruchim Habayim. We are continuing on Masechet Makkot, and we are on top of the Yud, Amud Aleph, 4 lines down from the top of the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned. L'schut Refuah Shlema, Sarah Bat Mina, and Refuah Shlema for Binyamin Eliezer Kohen ben Malka, Zivug for Gilhad ben Mordechai Ariel, healthy delivery for Talia Bat Rivka, Dat and Parnasa, for Avraham Raphael. This week's learnings of the Kahal is been sponsored by Dayan family, by Kohen family, and by Shri families. It should be ultimate hatzlacha for their entire mishpachot. And today's Amud specifically dedicated also to Refuah Shlema of Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid, that should have full recovery. Refuah Shlema, Amen. So here we are, continuing on the Gemara that we started. Abaye answers the question that was asked in the Gemara: why do you have to v'shilashta? The pasuk says you divide, and you have 3 arei miklat alongside Eretz Yisrael and alongside Ever Hayarden. Why do you have to have 4 different points of division? You could have easily divided it to 3 by putting 1 Ir Miklat on the northern border, 1 in the middle, and 1 in the southern border. Why do you have to have 4 points? That means you divide the length of Eretz Yisrael to 4, from northern border to Arei Miklat, from first Ir Miklat to the second, from second to third, and then from the third to the southern border. That's how we actually divide it. And what I said, well, that gives you that the central areas of Eretz Yisrael, namely the city of Shechem, is extremely close to Arei Miklat, because the mamash, you have it sandwiched by 2 Arei Miklat from the top, from the bottom, and it is extremely easy for the people, residents of Shechem, to go to Arei Miklat. And Abaye answered, because Shechem also, Shchichi Rotzchim, you had a lot of murder happening in city of Shechem. We explained that perhaps you have a DNA made for different, not just people and nations, but even for places. You find Shechem is always, as Chazal call it, Makom HaMuchan LePur'anut, is a place ready for Pur'anut. It happened in the time of Yaakov with Dinah and then the brothers, both in the area of promiscuity and immorality, and also by murder. And you have it in the pasuk. The Abaye says as well, Amar Abaye b'Shechem na mishchichi rotzchim. The chtiv and the pasuk that he brings is the element of both immorality and murder that's mentioned in the pasuk. Uchache ish gedudim chever kohanim derech yiratzchu shchema kizima asu. So the area of Zima and Orzer Tzicha is mentioned in association with the city of Shechem. My Chever Kohanim, the Gemara just goes on a tangent on this pasuk. What does he mean, a group of Kohanim? What does it have to do with a group of Kohanim? So says the Gemara, Amar Bilazar, Shayu mitchabrin la'arog nefashot kekohanim. They would gather to plan their homicides and crimes, just like the Kohanim in the season of Trumot Masrot, when the time, these things are seasonal. When you have the time of harvest and everyone has their produce piled up and ready to go, that's when Kohanim try to get Trumot Masrot, and you have groups of Kohanim gathering together. So this would be the same thing as that as well. ככהנים הללו שמתחברים לחלוק תרומות בבית הגרנות.
But all of these would not be subject to exile, but murders. You're saying this?
No, so we asked this question before, what exactly is the connection? So we said 2 different insight in it. One is that the Gemara mentioned that any person that would kill, that would run to Arei Miklat. This is how the Torah wants it to be, not just by the accidental kills, because we don't want the Goel Hadam. We don't want what Texas used to be, that everyone has strapped two guns, and you offend someone, they're going to shoot you, and then their family is going to shoot them, and you don't want a chaotic society. The people would run to Arei Miklat, whether Mezid or Shogeg, and then the adjudication of that case would be by Betin sending the police van, so to speak, to get him out of Arei Miklat to the Betin to stand trial, and then he would deal with it. That's one. And secondly, as we will see in the Gemara later on, HaKadosh Baruch Hu deals with the murderous cases that are not adjudicated properly, and sometimes a person that deserves to die would be killed accidentally by somebody else, right, on the bottom of the ladder, right? He was behind the gun yesterday, today he's going to be on the bottom of the ladder, someone's going to fall on him and kill him, and the top one is a guy that actually deserved to go to Galut, and now he's going to go. So it happens to be, the more people you need on the bottom of the ladder, the more people are going to be on top of the ladder. So that also definitely is there. And perhaps the third thing that we mentioned was that you have, for instance, by Reuben, that we mentioned before, there was a lot of murder happening in Evrei Yarden, which is the Shevet Reuben. Reuben was categorized by Yaakov Avinu as Pachaz Kamayim al Totar, a person that the reason for their losing of the firstborn's rights, the Bechorah, was because they were quick to act. They were not thoughtful. They were not methodically thought through. And a person like that could, get emotional, angry, and do something like Reuben did, right? Going and switching the bed of his father from one place to another, hence losing every good thing that he had coming to him. And a person like that also could end up with a lot of shgaga, because you're not thinking about all the details of what could happen, and you end up with accidental kills as well. So there are many different ways of seeing the answer to that question, as we alluded to them prior. But says the Gemara, Betuleka, the beginning of the line, while you have only 6, you don't have any more cities of refuge of Arei Miklat v'aktiv. It says in the pasuk, V'alem titnu 42 ir. On top of the 6, you're going to have another 42 cities. Really is a stira in the psukim, right? In one pasuk it says you'll have 6 shesh Arei Miklat tiena, and on the other hand the pasuk says you have to add to them 40. So it's clear that's going to be different, the Arei Miklat, and according to the Maharsha over here, the pasuk is asking, what is the difference? In other words, we know that one pasuk says shesh, one pasuk says add to them 42. It's not, we read Chumash, we know that, right? So the deeper understanding of the question of the Gemara is, what exactly is the difference? Why do you have to have shesh and then have 42 on top of them? And that's going to be the answer. The Gemara over here, Amar Abaye, halalu koltot ben ledat, ben shlo ledat. The 6 Arei Miklat that are mentioned initially, the 3 in the Evrei Yarden and the 3 in the Eretz Canaan Primir, those 6 are additional, they have additional protection, that even if you as the Rotzeach Beshogeg don't know that you're in one of those 6 cities, the Goel Adam cannot touch you. Right? Even if Goel Adam knows that this guy has no idea where he is trying to run to Arei Miklat, and he doesn't know, it's unbeknownst to him that he is actually in Arei Miklat. If he would be in one of the 42, he could kill him. But if he's in one of the 6, even Shelo Midat, they're koltot. Even if the guy has no clue that he happens to be in Arei Miklat, they have the protection afforded for him. Koltot ben ledat, ben shelo ledat, halalu ledat, koltot shelo ledat, enan koltot. The other 42, they don't provide protection without your knowledge. Now the Gemara later on in Daf Yud Gimel also discusses the other differences. For instance, do you have to pay rent to the Levim? Is this like an Airbnb property, or is it something that is just a hachnasad orchim, that you go there and you don't have to pay anything? It's provided by the Torah for these people to live without having to pay rent. So we'll discuss those as well later on, but the basic difference that the Gemara gives over here is halalu leda'at v'shelo leda'at, but the other ones are only going to be koltot leda'at. Next question of the Gemara, what we alluded to before, also is in connection with our parasha this week. V'chevron in miklatu, Chevron is in Shevet Yehuda. Chevron is not a city of refuge, says the pasuk. We all know that Yehoshua and Kalev, they were the people who stood strong, each one of them in their own way, and the pasuk does not necessarily acknowledge Yehoshua as support of Moshe Rabbeinu, but very much acknowledges the Kalev, Ve'avdi Kalev ekev ruach acheret hayta imo, and he gets a very explicit reward from Hashem for standing up to the other 10 meraglim and not being swayed by their atzat meraglim, and he was given as reward the city of Hebron. So Hebron had an owner. The owner was Kalev ben Yefuneh, and that's from Shevet Yehuda. It doesn't go to Shevet Levi. That's a powerful question from the pasuk itself. So it says the Gemara ba'aktiv ve'itenu leKalev et Hebron kasher diber Moshe. They gave Moshe Rabbeinu promised him, and they actually gave it to him. If you take a look at the psukim in Sefer Yoshua, what Moshe Rabbeinu had determined to happen actually happened. ויתנו לכלב את חברון כאשר דיבר משה ויורש משם את שלושת בני הענק. There were the three Anakim, Bnei Anak, that they lived in Hebron, and he kicked them out and he conquered the city of Hebron for himself and his family. So that's pretty explicit as you could get. That seems to be a checkmate question. Gemara says, no, it's not such a checkmate. Amar Abaye, Parvadah. It's only the suburbs of Hebron that was given to Kalev. In other words, real central Hebron was Ir HaKohanim, Ir HaLeviim. It was a city of Leviim, but the suburbs of it was given to Hebron. How do I know that? Abaye says, well, you have to know the whole Tanakh. You can't just pick one pasuk and flag it to gain a question. But if you take a look at the other psukim, he actually says, "Ve'et sedei ha'ir ve'et chasereha natnu leKalev." They only gave the suburbs of the city of Hebron and the fields around it to Kalev ben Yefuneh. Fine, that answers the question. Says the Gemara further question, the Kedesh Ir Mikladu? You mentioned the Kedesh is Ir Miklat. V'haktiv, it says, Ve'are miftzar hasadim, the cities that they were fortified cities with walls around them, tall walls around, that they were made for defense, only were in larger cities. There are many small, mid-sized, they're villages, small cities, mid-sized cities, and then there are cities that are large. There are a lot of men, women, children, elderly, and those cities you wanted them to be fortified to protect against basic attacks of enemy. So any Arei Mifsar, any city that was fortified with walls around it, you could consider that they were large cities, right? So why is that even in Inyan over here? Very simple, because the Gemara is going to teach us that the Arei Miklat were not supposed to be small cities, and were not supposed to be large cities. They had to be mid-sized. They had to be. And the Gemara explains why. And therefore, if I know that the city of Kadesh was one of the Arei Mifsar, that already is a question to be asked. How can you have one of the Arei Mifsar be one of the Arei Miklat? And that would be a serious question. So now we go back to this pasuk. Ve'arei Mifsar, the pasuk says, Hasidim ser vechamat rakat vekineret ve'adama v'harama v'chasor vekedesh ve'edrei ve'en chasor. So pasuk in Yehoshua, Perek Yutet. This is after Yehoshua becomes a map book. You know, and it's very exciting to learn stuff for Yehoshua until Perek Yud Zayin, I think it is. And then when it gets to the kishkas of the division of the land, then you have to really have a map with you to go through all these names and understand what exactly was happening in the conquest and division of the land. This is like 2 prakim in, and as you see, it's like a pasuk with all names of the different cities, but now all of a sudden it becomes very much relevant, this random, seemingly random pasuk, because this is one of the large fortified cities, the city of Kedesh. So how in the world can that be one of the Arei Miklat? So says the Gemara, V'Tanya, we learned in Braita, Arim Halalu, these cities, the cities of Miklat, the refuge cities, Eno Sinotan Loterin Katanim, we don't make them from small little village or little towns, V'lo Krachim Gedolim, and you don't make them large cities either, Ela Ayarot Benoniot. It has to be mid-sized cities. Now the Gemara is going to explain exactly why that is. Last narrow line, Amar Rav Yosef. The answer is, Rav Yosef says, Tarti Kedesh Havai. There are 2 cities called Kedesh. That's the easy answer, right? One of them is Arei Miftzar, because this is such a bomb kasha that you can't just get around it. You have to say there are 2 different ones, because an Ir Miftzar cannot be an Ir Miklat. So therefore, it just says, well, there are sometimes you had a large city that was so prominent and famous that cities, small cities or mid-sized cities next to it would be called based on the large city that they were in their vicinity, and that's the Pshat, says the Gemara, says Rav Yosef. And the Gemara says that we have a precedent for this as well. Amar Rav Ashi, Kegon, Slikum, Ve'akra de Slikum. Precedent, you have a large city, Slikum, and they have a suburb city next to it, a small city that's called Akra de Slikum.
Did you ever have a city that lost its status as Arab Miklat because it grew too much?
Well, you can't have it as the Gemara is going to say. If I understand your question correctly, the Gemara is actually going to address the reverse case of your question in just a moment. Gufa, we learned, again, first wide line, Arim halalu enosinotan lotirin ktanim velo krachin gedolim. We do not want to have large cities as cities of Miklat. Also, we don't want them to be small, little hick-towns or villages either. El ayarot benoniot, they have to be mid-sized cities. Ve'en moshivinotan ela b'makom mayim. You want the city to be self-sufficient. In other words, as the Gemara is going to say a lot of halachot and then mention one pasuk that really is an overarching umbrella as a umbrella reason for why all of these details of halacha apply, that you should make it that the Rotzeach, the Meshogeg, could live there comfortably. So that, living there comfortably, has a lot of details of what is considered living comfortably. So one of the things is, we don't want him to have to go out of the city, because you go out of the city because there's no running water in the city, so you have to go outside to the river, right? So that's an easy target. Like in 6 o'clock a.m., you go with your bullets, and that's it. There goes the Goel Adam killing the Rotzeach. So we want the city to have its own water source inside the city, not outside. We don't want the Goel Adam the Rotzeach to have to exit the city in any regular life scenario. So therefore, says the Gemara, Ela b'makom mayim. Ve'im en shamayim, and if there is no mayim, if there's no water, not every city, especially Eretz Yisrael, limtar shamayim tishtamayim, is not a city of rivers and natural bodies of water. It's limtar shamayim tishtamayim. So if you don't have 48 cities with natural water, not necessarily. So what happens if you don't have? Nobody goes out. You'll have water carriers systematically made by Bet Din and by the government to bring water inside the city to sell, to provide, however they did it, but nobody goes out. That cannot be the natural life pattern of a city of Miklat. There has to be water provided inside the city. You can't have an Ir Miklat that doesn't have its own bazaar. It doesn't have its own marketplace. It has to have a marketplace with basic needs of life, because when you have marketplace, everything comes to the city. You don't have to go out. If you don't have, imagine a city that doesn't have a marketplace, then you have what you have. 98% until 100 years ago of the life of even Americans was surrounding the agricultural system. Business was also surrounding that. So if you have whatever you have, then for other things you don't have, you have to go out, right? Unless you have a marketplace that brings everything from everywhere to that city to provide for people. You want tomatoes? We got it. You want skin? We got it. You want eggs? Everything is there, right? So the Arei Miklat, as means of being self-sufficient, has to be in a place that has a lively marketplace, that the Goel Hadam would not catch the Rotzeach outside trying to get the basic needs and necessities of life. You also want to have surrounding cities to be busy. You don't want they have population per square mile, right? So you don't want the population per square mile of the city to be very low. You want the Goel Adam to the Rotzeach rather, to be comfortably camouflaging inside the city, that the Goel Adam cannot easily find and spot him. Even though that, again, Arei Miklat itself are safe cities, but even with that, you want him to be comfortably, blending in, hiding inside the population. You don't want it to be an empty city. Nitmatu ochlosehen, right? This is regarding your question, right? Nitmatu ochlosehen, if the population is going down, we import people, right? Mosifin alehen, we import people. We need to keep the demographic of Arei Miklat exactly such that it's a comfort zone for a person to live in, right? Especially if you are living in fear in your mind, and you go to a place that you're walking and there's no one around you walking, so you could be spotted so easily, that's not a comfortable life. We want him to be blending inside, You could go to Manhattan and you could be on top of a camel and you will be blending in. That's it's so busy. Now, you don't want it to be that busy, but it has to be uchlusin. It has to be a certain amount of people per square mile, so to speak, to allow him to be blending in. Nitmatu diurin mevin lahem kohanim levim veYisraelim. If there are not enough people living there, right, then we bring them Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim, we bring them everything that they need to have enough people living in Arei Miklat. The population of Arei Miklat is the population control the other way around, right? You want to make sure they have enough people there for these individuals to live a comfortable life. Ve'en mochrin bahen lo kle zayin velo kle mesuda. Divrei Rabbi Nechemia. Rabbi Nechemia says you cannot have a gun shop in Arei Miklat. You don't have swords, spears, nothing of that nature, right? Guns, bullets, nothing. Spears, bow and arrow, none of those things are going to have a shop in Arei Miklat, because again, even though the halacha is that Arei Miklat, it's asur for Goel Adam to act upon his anger, it's a safe zone, but you never know. He may come and he says, I'll go down with him. So therefore, we make it as hard as possible for anyone to act upon their anger. There is no klei zayin and no weapons available in Arei Miklat. Not only that, says Rabbi Nechemia, we don't even have klei mesuda, ropes to hang someone. You have fishermen's ropes and all those. None of that is available in Arei Miklat. We want it to actually be a safe zone. Says the Gemara, Chachamim, Matirin, Chachamim say it's not a big deal. You could have those, Veshavin she'en porsin betochan mesudot, but they agree, even Chachamim, that you don't spread traps, ve'en mafshilin letochan chavalim, you don't stretch ropes there. Again, these are things that would be the easiest items to kill. Kedesh lo te regel goel adam mitzuyasham. We don't want those things to be available. We also don't want the goel adam to be doing business there. That's another thing as well. And one of the reasons that you don't want it to be large cities, too big of a city, is because we don't want the Goel Adam to be doing business there. Every week the Goel Adam comes in for his business and sees this guy there. That's also not a pleasant thing. We don't want other people from other cities to need to come to the cities of Miklat, because then the Goel Adam, which probably lives in a neighboring city anyways, is going to be coming there every Wednesday morning for shuk, for business. That also is not something that we want to have. So it says,
Rabbi, it sounds like this is the genesis of all these draconian liberal ideas.
No, it's not. This is just having. It's not. This is. That has nothing to do with now they.
Social engineering at its best. I mean, this is what we have here.
דברי רבי נחמיה, וחכמים מתירין, ושבין שאין פורסין בתוכן מסודות, ואין מפשילין לתוכן חבלים, כדי שלא יהיה רגל גואל אדם מצויה שם. We don't want that to not be a safe zone. Now, the thing that we mentioned before, again, it's not a safe zone for everyone, right? It has nothing to do with the negative culture that we experience in some of the parts of the world. If a person is taken to Bedin after that and he's found to be guilty, he'll be put to death. It's not that you don't have death penalty. We do have death penalty, and that would exactly be carried on. We just want the people not to carry their own thing. We don't want a chaotic society that everyone, again, imagine to yourself the Texas of 200 years ago, that every person were their own police and sheriff with their guns on their hips and carrying out what they felt to be justice. This was a reality of the world, and the first and only society that actually had a system around it has been us. To have an enforcement of a judicial system to take the law out of the people's hands. This is, if you actually come to think about it, is the most ingenious system that has been created, providing justice for the society at large. So again, there's a lot to talk about with Goel Adam and why Goel Adam would even be allowed to do what he did. And if nowadays the Goel Adam applies, which is even a more interesting subject. I didn't realize we were completely out of time. We'll stop here, B'ezrat Hashem, and we'll continue this in the days to come.